Welcome to the show with Ron, where we look at the context behind the headlines. That's because there's a lot out there that's already been decided for you and me by the media, the government, etc. And there's no need to be too cynical about knowing this. It's kind of the way it's always been. And there's also a lot of AI jumble reporting, probably more and more every day, and a lot of just the facts reporting. So it makes sense to examine all this a bit and see if we can add context to the news. So let's get right to it. Here we have the latest news. We have, as kind of expected, as everyone thought from the beginning, we have Trump is sweeping the primaries. And at this point, everybody has to look at how is this going to play out, because we've got Trump is certainly a chaotic, perhaps dangerous, depending on your point of view, and if other people say he's absolutely necessary no matter what. And then we have Biden, who shows signs of senility, and the people who oppose him say he has to be opposed no matter what. And so we're in a polarized situation here in America. And I suppose, it's changed a lot in the last couple of decades, because back in the 80s and the 90s, it was all about capturing the center. The Republicans came in the 80s. These are very broad generalizations, again, and they were able to portray the Democrats as tax and spend, very left-wing liberals. And of course, U.S. did have a very high regressive tax schedule back then. A lot was made of how weak the Democrats, like Jimmy Carter, were on defense. He was just a little less than Reagan on a lot of issues, like the nukes, the MX missiles. But the Republicans were able to capture that center for a long time, for almost 12 years, where the Democrats were nowhere. Then Clinton came in. The Democrats changed their primary system to make sure there was a more centrist candidate who would win the Democratic primary. So they changed the order of the primaries. That's why when we look at the primaries here in America, they are conducted and the schedule is set by the parties for certain backdoor reasons to get the right candidate into power. This year they split the Iowa caucus, which is usually the first primary. They split it into two. The Republicans had it as first as normal. Democrats have it next month. And the reason they did is they didn't want any dark horse candidate to come in and be a challenger to Biden, because Biden was already decided. He's the candidate. He's the only candidate. All our eggs are in that basket. Whether that's smart, I don't know. So this is what we have with the primaries. We have the primaries are set up to elect certain people that the parties want. Of course, anything can happen in those, and there are lots of surprises that happen in primaries despite any kind of backstage changes that are made. So here we also have, the media certainly is playing up the worrying blunders that Trump supposedly is making. Gets Melania's name wrong, says he wants Biden as president. Certainly we don't see the media play up all these things that of the Biden senility and his strange behavior sometimes. It did break into the news in recent weeks with the report that they weren't going to prosecute him on those with the email issue because he couldn't answer questions properly, something like that. So the media was forced to sort of acknowledge that situation. But I wonder whether Trump is dangerously demented, as they say here. He may be, but I don't know if it's because he's senile yet. Who knows what it is, but I think when you hear Trump speak, he's a rabble rouser and he speaks without thinking, and that certainly would should cause a lot of gaffes. It's different than the careful politicians of the past who were, again, always trying to show they were moving to the center. Like we said, we had Clinton in the 90s. They came up with this demographic of soccer moms, and these were well-off people who were voting for Republicans who might vote for a Democrat who was showing he was, he was not a tax and spend Democrat, and he was strong on defense. So people were moving to the center, and that meant they tried to sound reasonable. Like George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, he was talked about a kinder and gentler America. Certainly the second George W. Bush tried to show that as well, like he was just some regular guy. I don't know how that worked very well, but again, those were appeals to, I'm a regular, sensible person in the middle, moving to capture the center of politics, not the extreme right, not the extreme left. But now, where things are polarized, someone like Trump is speaking outrageously, I think sometimes perhaps on purpose, to capture that vote. There is no more impulse to move to the center. And here people are kind of picking this apart very properly to talk about how there are a huge blocks of Republicans who are not comfortable with Trump. Where do those people go? And here's more on this. The people who would vote for Trump are the older, whiter, less educated Americans. But the majority of voters and a lot of Republicans do not fit into that category. So perhaps he's going to run into trouble once we get down the line into the elections. I think the general elections next year in November, that's a long time. And that's a long time for Biden to make some gaffes that would have to be played up in the news at this point. If he is displaying his the way he behaves in a senile way. And I've see, this is the point that certainly the parties have to understand. We know in the media that largely supports Biden, they portray, let's get this guy's chest off of the screen. They portray the age situation as numbers, saying, well, Biden is 80 or 81, and that's a very high number. So people say that's too high. That's too old to be president. I don't think anyone's saying that. And then they say, Trump's just 77. That's not too much younger. So there's really, they're close together. So they're both fine. But that's not what people are saying. They see what's happened to Biden and Biden's behavior, and that makes them worry. And I think maybe the media is trying that same thing on Biden when they're playing up these verbal gaffes that Trump makes. But I don't know. If you get to this point and you like Trump, and then you said, oh, he made some verbal gaffes, and then you're not going to vote for him, I doubt there's any. If you've stuck with him this long, the fact that he misspoke once or twice, I don't think is really going to sway anyone from him. Here we have Nikki Haley. While her wind down, her campaign is in sight. Certainly she was encouraged to be there by big behind-the-scenes rich guys in the party, like these billionaires who fund a lot of stuff in the Republican Party. A lot of the movers and shakers probably saw polls for general election or people predicting what's going to happen then, and they said, Trump's not our best guy. He's not the best guy to pick. And for months now, and I've been talking about this here, all the way back several months ago when the governor of Iowa endorsed DeSantis in the caucuses. And that was where DeSantis was completely gone from the campaign. He had kind of flamed out not ready for prime time. Nikki Haley was just kind of in the wings. So all of that was a sign that big people in the party were saying, let's put somebody else up there and see if we can't swap them out for swap Trump out. I hate news about Nazis. I think, like most people, it's quite outrageous. You know, I'll come to go to this anyway. You know, extremists, openly mingling there at these Republican-allied political action conferences. I think probably we'll see the media hype up situations like this because, again, to try to, to paint Trump as an extremist. And, in terms of capturing the center, we already see of Biden kind of almost reversing his immigration policy, saying he's going to shut down the border, which is what Trump used to say. And when Trump said it, he was the worst anti-American racist ever. Biden, not so much. But that's the capturing the center. Trump is probably a candidate who cannot capture the center. He's too off the cuff, unhinged, if you will, in the way he speaks. And so the question would be, like, then why are there a lot of party bigwigs that stand behind him? Because they say, we think he's somebody who can win, and once he's in there, he'll do what we want. A neocon life goals. One of their goals was get Roe v. Wade overturned. Trump did that because he got in the White House in a surprise move. There were Supreme Court justices to be appointed, and he seemed to appoint people who were, I don't know if not neutral anymore, but right-leaning, who would be sure to overturn the Roe v. Wade, the abortion ruling. And both Obama and Hillary Clinton in 2016, in their hubris, in their arrogance, they were so sure that Hillary was going to win. Obama stepped aside kind of without a fight in his attempt to appoint one of the Supreme Court vacancies. And when Hillary didn't win, that fell to Trump. The people who supported Trump, just to say, well, we're using him to get what we want done, they got some mileage out of that. Got inflation in the news. We got measles in the news. We've got homelessness in Los Angeles, California. I believe now homelessness in America is at an all-time high. And again, I don't support Trump. I try to be partisan, but I do have to say, if there was this high degree of homelessness in America and there was a Republican in office, you can be sure that if you looked at the media, this would be laid at the doorstep of a Republican president for being uncaring and cruel and doesn't care about poor people. But there is none of that agitation in the press now, and I believe it's only because there's a Democrat in the White House. I mean, I try to see things the way they are, despite any political leanings, and that is the way it is in the media. More about the bust of electric vehicles. Yeah, I think if you're not in America, it might seem, EVs might seem more useful, and you might not understand, but America, it's a driving country over colossal distances that maybe, unless you drive a lot in maybe China or, cross nation in Australia, you just can't appreciate the distances that Americans drive, and on a regular basis. It may be at this point EVs are not right for them. And by the same token, these American companies who are putting the EVs on the back burner may be missing out in a lot of smaller developing countries that have 100% of their energy, their oil, gasoline imported. Those countries really do want to encourage EV usage. It's quite critical for them. So, but the U.S. market is just so big, it's going to probably swing things around. It's a gorilla in the room, I guess. I mean, so that's the news for today. It was politics heavy with Trump and understanding, capturing the center, and where things are going to land now. And we're going to keep watching that in the future. So stay tuned. And before I go, I want to tell you about my book. Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, and then go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can no longer give. This is the story of There Are Still Unknown Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale for a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies in far-off places. So that's my novel. I mean, it feeds into a lot of the themes that I think are in the news now. People's disillusionment with government, people being fed information, things being decided for them. And in the novel, we have young people and local people who are going out to the ends of the world to find themselves and who have become disillusioned by the promises of the world. So it'd be great if you bought it. Buy it, read it, let me know what you think. So I think that's the news for today. As I always say, don't go marching in anyone's parade. Don't go down swinging in anybody else's fight. Let's just think about it first. And join me again next time where we try to understand the context of the news. I'll see you next time.